Hey everyone, Kelly here, and this is the beginning of a Try a Chapter video, and this came about for several different reasons. So it's February, and if you had watched my TBR, I had this thought in my head that I was going to read a lot of romance this month, and that didn't really happen. I don't know, things just kind of got away from me. I was doing a lot of buddy reads at the beginning of the month. I did read, I think I only read one romance. Yeah, I read a romance novel, but I was just reading other things, finishing things I had started, doing buddy reads, picking up other things. And then it suddenly got to the end of February. Right now, when I'm beginning recording this, it is 5 days till the end of the month. And I'm I can't cram all of these romance books that I got out from the library into these 5 days. And then, when March starts, I'm going to be kind of pivoting and doing more middle grade books, so I don't know when I'm going to get around to these. So I was well, do I just return them all to the library? So that was my first thought. Maybe I should do a try a chapter just so that I can know which books I should keep out from the library and kind of intersperse in my reading the next few months, and which ones I can return so I'm not just holding these forever and not actually reading them. The other reason that this video came about was because in the middle of the month, I did start a vlog where I was going to read a bunch of romance. And for the reasons I mentioned earlier, it just didn't happen. I, started it. I did the intro. I did one update. And then I just didn't read any more romance at that time. And so I was I had to just abandon that vlog. But I still wanted some kind of romance content this month because I had planned to do some romance and all these romance books. So this was a way to kind of do that. And then the third reason I'm doing this is because I was kind of inspired by Kayla from Books and Lala. She did a video that came out last week or a couple days ago where she tried the first chapter of all the books on her TBR. Well, obviously I'm not going to read the first chapter of all the books on my TBR. All praise to Kayla for doing hour-and-a-half long videos, but that's not me. Sorry, you can hear my kids chaos in the background. That's just normal kid life, right? But yeah, I'm not at that Kayla caliber and have no interest in that level of try chapter, but it did make me want to do a try chapter because I just really love them. I do enjoy kind of seeing if I'm going to get into a book. So let me show you what I am going to read the first chapter of. I'm just going to show you the book right now, and I'm not going to give you the description. I'll do that when I actually read the first chapters because I don't always know what all these about. A lot of these I got from favorite videos from other booktubers at the end of the year. So I don't necessarily know a lot of information about all of these. So let me just tell you what they are. I split them into historical and contemporary romances and then a little speculative. So first of all, for the historicals, I have The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. And then I have A Scoundrel of Her Own by Stacy Reid. And Who's That Earl by Susanna Craig. And I think that I have not read any from any of these authors. So these are all new to me authors, which was another reason I wanted to try them. I want to find some new favorite romance authors. So that was the other reason of getting all these from the library. So this will kind of help me to see what draws me in right away. So for contemporary, I have Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. And I have read from this author, but I've read her middle grade. I've never read any of her adult. I think this is her first adult book, but I'm sure it's different than her middle grade. And then I have Two Wrongs Make a Right by Chloe Leese. And Just Like This by Cole McCade. And then for the speculative, first I have Summoning Up Love by Cynthia Williams. And I think this is a contemporary with paranormal elements in it. And then A Taste of Gold and Iron by Alexandra Rowland. And I think this is historical fantasy romance. I think it's kind of based off of the Byzantine Empire, and it is fantastical, but really focused on the romance. So those are the books that I'm going to read the first chapter of, and then I will update you on whether I want to keep them from the library or return them. All right, I have tried the first two. I'm trying to do this in pairs of one more contemporary and one more historical, so I don't read a lot of the historicals in a row or the same kind of things in a row. First, I picked up Summoning Up Love and read the first chapter of that. And this is about a woman who a lot of things are going wrong. She was fired and her boyfriend broke up with her. And so she decides to get out of town, stay at her grandmother's beach house, and, kind of have a little break from life. And that's basically what happens in the first chapter. As she's arriving at the beach house, her grandmother shows up. Sorry that these cuts are so abrupt in this. I still have a little bit of a cold, and so I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I still have like that phlegminess, and I don't want you to have any cold type stuff in this. You don't need to see me blowing my nose and all that. So back to what I was saying. Her grandmother comes to, greet her, and her grandmother mentions that she thinks that her grandfather is kind of haunting, or his spirit is in the house. I don't think it's in the beach house. I think it's in her grandmother's house that she's living in. And that the grandmother has hired these guys to come and figure out what's going on with the spirit. They're kind of like paranormal investigators. That's everything that happens in the first chapter. I just thought this was really easy to read. Like, the writing was just really compatible with my reading of a romance. I want a romance to read quickly. Cat, can you not? Come on. The cat just really wants to rub against the tripod. So sorry if you're shaking a little. Come on. Come here. Yeah, so it was just really nice, easy reading. So I zoomed through that first chapter that was like 16 pages long. I'm interested in this whole like paranormal investigating thing. The cover is just really calling to me. I just think this is a really pretty cover. The concept sounds interesting, of there being like paranormal investigators. So I definitely want to pick up and read more. This made me want to keep going. So I liked that one. And then this one I picked up, Who's That Earl? And stop with the tripod, kitty. Oh my gosh. Does anybody else have cats that do this? I know they do, because I've seen it in other people's videos. But it's just like every time I get out the tripod, he wants to be here. Like, I would say half of my cuts in my videos are because of this cat. Anyways, so this one is kind of like a spy, historical romance with a spy kind of theme. I read the synopsis because the first chapter only follows the guy and not the woman at all. So I read the synopsis to kind of see the basis of what's happening. So I think we're going to be following both characters. The woman is a novelist that I think her pen name is a man's name, so people don't know that she is a novelist, and that she is staying at this rundown castle. And then the man we are following is a spy, and he inherits the castle that she is renting out. And so the first chapter, we are just following the man, and he's like on one of his like spy things out in the middle of nowhere. Somebody approaches him and is like, hey, you need to come in to headquarters or whatever. And that's when he finds out that he is now a titled earl or something like that and owns this castle and has to deal with the lease. Yeah, so that's all that happens in the first chapter. It's actually fairly long. Well, maybe it isn't. I mean, it says it ends on page 20, but I don't think it starts on page 1. No, so it's only actually 11-page chapter, but it felt long. Like, it felt longer than this one. I mean, it is bigger, so that makes sense, but it just, I kept wanting to put it down. It did not flow. The writing did not flow for me. The concept is very interesting. And so I'm not saying I will never read this one, because I like this whole like kind of spy novel in a romance. Her being like a writer that's like disguising herself. That all sounds interesting. But I did not get along well with the writing. So I think that I will return this to the library, and down the line sometime I will pick it up on audiobook and try it that way. Because sometimes if I can't get on with the writing too well for reading it physically, I can get past that by doing the audiobook. Because this is like, this is the difference I'm talking about. There's nothing wrong with this writing compared to this writing. But this one just like went really smoothly for me. I never had to reread sentences. I just like was in it and like absorbed in it. Where this one, I did have to keep rereading certain sentences. The structure just didn't like flow for me. Like, I'll even read you the first line. Nothing wrong with it, but maybe I had to reread it like 3 times. Just the very first line says, in spite of the eerie, not quite quiet that settled over the island in the hours between dusk and dawn, Lieutenant Thomas Sutherland nearly missed the telltale rhythm of oars slicing through water. Nothing wrong with that sentence, but I think it was like this whole like not quite quiet and kind of like, I don't know, the way that it was written. And there was another sentence later in that same page that I'm not going to go through and find it, but I had to read the sentence a couple times. Sorry, cat knocking down things. So once again, abrupt cut. apologize. But yeah, there was another sentence later on in that same page that I also had to sit and read a couple times because it just didn't flow for me. And I kept like not really feeling absorbed. I had to like work harder. And not that that is bad writing, but it just, when I'm reading a romance, I really just want to be like absorbed in the relationship and let it take me away. So this one I'll get returned, and this one I want to keep and read sometime. All right, the next two have been read. So the first one, the contemporary one, is Two Wrongs Make a Right. And this one is like a hate to love. These two are introduced at a party. It goes disastrously. And I think it's gonna, from the synopsis, that her sister and like his roommate are still gonna try to push them together, and then I think they end up fake dating in order to like kind of trick them. Yeah, but they really do not like each other in the first meeting. They're very much different people. Like, she's very artistic and he's very like put together and all that. And yeah, so it has that kind of initial hate to love feel. I ended up reading 2 chapters of this because the first chapter, I just wasn't loving her voice, and so I wanted to kind of give him a chance, and I liked the second chapter, which is from his perspective, much more. So I'm just kind of torn, because the thing with hers was that there was like this kind of trope, I don't know if it's a trope, or this thing that happens in some romance books that bugs me, where a character, like, you know, they're meeting somebody for the first time and they haven't even like talked, they just see them for the first time and they fantasize having sex with them. And that just like really bothers me. Like, the first thing she thinks of is seeing him naked, and he hasn't spoken, she doesn't know anything about him, and I don't know, that just bugs me. There's other books in the past that I've read where that has happened, and then I didn't end up liking it because I just don't like that kind of like initial objectification of a person before even like talking to them. I don't know, it's just something that bugs me personally, so that was bothering me about her chapter. But like I said, I liked his better, and like he's attracted to her and he's like mentioning that, but it's not like he's like, oh, I'm gonna picture you head to toe naked first before I even like hear a word from you. Like, that's what bothers me. So this is on the edge. I'm not sure. I'm gonna wait until I've read some more and then kind of make a decision at the end whether I keep this one or not. Like, I think the writing was fine. It was just that little thing that bothered me, and I don't know if that's gonna bug me about her as a character throughout. And then next I picked up the historical, The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics, and I really enjoyed this first chapter. We end up following both of the women. So first is Lucy, who she used to work with her father, who was, it's hard for me to, he was couldn't tell if he was a mathematician or astronomer. They were working with astronomy, but she was like doing a lot of the work, but not getting credit because of the time period. And then she gets contacted by this woman whose husband has passed away, and she also was assisting her husband with astronomy. And so Lucy goes to the woman's house to like help out with this new thing. And I just really liked both of these characters. I like the whole science aspect in the historical. So this one I'm definitely keeping. All right, I have finished 2 more beginning chapters. This one, A Scoundrel of Her Own. It started with a prologue, which was long. Like, the prologue in itself was, how long was this? Like 24 pages. And I thought, well, I could just read the prologue. But the prologue is like all in a flashback of when they're children. They're like 8 and 12. Well, that doesn't give me much of a sense of how their character's going to be as adults. So I ended up also reading the first chapter, which is long. So I ended up reading like 50 pages in order to try this. Sorry, kitty. No, don't be doing that. Yeah, so like 50 pages. And I ended up doing the audiobook because I was like, oh, I'm going to do 50 pages. I'll just listen to it, then I'll make it go faster. But I hated the audiobook. So if I were to come back to this, I would just read it physically because I did not like the voice of the narrator. Nothing wrong with her. She just was like very like making it more dramatic than it probably needed to be at the beginning. So basically what I read to set up the story was the prologue takes place, like I said, when they're children. They're 8 and 12, and she like almost drowns in a river and he saves her, but they're swept down the river enough that they're like out in the middle of nowhere and have to like kind of survive for a few days until someone finds them. Like, they can't find their way back to civilization. So they bond as children, but he is like poor and she is like rich. So they're not allowed to stay friends after they go back to civilization. And then chapter 1, it's 15 years later, they're in their 20s, and we're kind of like meeting them in that time now. So the first half was from her point of view, and just like I don't feel like we got much about her personality, but what was going on in her life. Like her father is really sick, and her finding out some secrets that her father told on his deathbed, and then he is okay. So he didn't end up dying. He told her these secrets, and now she wants to go find out about these secrets. And then the second half of the first chapter is from his point of view, and he has like that whole thing when he was a child has affected his life, and he has decided he wants to be worthy of a woman like her, and so he has like worked to make himself wealthy, but like I think as being like a criminal, or at least like doing stuff that maybe isn't all on the up and up. And he sees her for the first time since they're children and is like, that's her, that's the woman I love, or whatever, that he's still in love with 15 years later. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to continue this right now. I may pick it up later and read it physically, but I just wasn't getting into the prologue at all, because I was like, oh, I'm supposed to like get invested in them as like children, and he's like talking about being in love with her as like a 12-year-old, and how he's going to love her forever, and how they're going to get married. And I'm like, you're 12 and she's 8. Like, it just kind of weirded me out. And so like, I feel like if we just started as adults, I would have liked it better. I did not like that prologue, which is why I wanted to continue and read the first chapter, because I felt like it wasn't giving it a fair enough shot. But if he's going to keep like going back to thinking of her when she was like 8, because that's what he's like, he sees her and he's like, oh, it's the girl I fell in love with when I was 12. I'm like, let's move on to her being an adult now and like looking like an adult and all that, and not talk about your childhood love. Yeah, I get like, there are like, childhood friends to lovers, but this was like they met for like 4 days as children, and he's still in love with her 15 years later. So not sure I'm loving that, and not feeling it right now. So may come back to this, but won't be reading it currently. And then I read the first chapter of Delilah Green Doesn't Care. In that chapter, we are following Delilah, and she's living in New York City. She's kind of sleeping around, which that's even on the back. It says that like she wakes up with a new like woman every morning. And that's just kind of her life, just kind of figuring things out in New York City, trying to be a photographer. But then she gets called back to her hometown in Oregon, I think it is, because her stepsister is getting married, and she's supposed to photograph the wedding. And that's what's happening in the first chapter. She, we're kind of establishing her life in New York City, but then her stepsister calls her and be like, aren't you going to be here and for my wedding? And yeah, the second chapter is from the other woman's point of view, but I didn't end up continuing because after reading the first chapter, I just wasn't in the mood for this right now. First of all, I just didn't like love Delilah. And I don't want to like judge Delilah off that first chapter, because I'm sure that a lot of her character growth is going to happen as she goes and like hopefully like kind of builds a friendship with her sister, and then meets this woman that she's going to fall in love with. Like hopefully there'll be character growth, but I just didn't really like her personality in that first chapter. And so like, I don't know, I probably should have gone on to the second chapter like I did with that book earlier to like hear Claire's point of view. I think that's the other woman. But like Claire's point of view also started with them like her getting drunk, and I was just like, I just don't know if I'm in the mood for this right now. Might pick this up on audio at another time, because I've just heard really good things. I've loved Ashley Herring Blake's other books, so I want to give this a fair shot. But like the way I'm feeling about it right now, I don't want to continue it right now. I think I will pick it up fresh another time with the audiobook, and hopefully like give it much more chapters to get into it. But I don't think I'm going to keep it now. I'm just not in the mood. Like neither of these I'm in the mood for right now, and I want to like make sure I'm only reading the romances I'm in the mood for, so that I give them a fair shot and give myself a fair shot to enjoy them. So not even just the book, like I want to enjoy what I'm reading, and neither of these were the thing I'm in the mood for. So I have 2 more to read the first chapter of, and then I'll give you my final update of which ones I'm keeping from the library. All right, time to finish this off, because I want to put this up while it is still February, and today is February 28th. And so I did go to the last ones. So this one I ended up listening to an audiobook because I wanted to just do it in the car on the like way to dropping my daughter off. Well, it was after I dropped my daughter off at preschool, but so she wasn't in the car with me. And this one is about two teachers. It's the art teacher and the phys ed teacher at like, I think it's like a private boarding school kind of setting is the impression I got. And they had never had a reason to talk to each other before, but then there's like some conflict about a student. The phys ed teacher thinks that he is like missing football practice because of the art teacher, and the art teacher's like, no, he runs out of here right away after art class to go to football practice. So this kid is obviously lying to both these teachers. So I think they're gonna like get together and like try to figure out what's going on with their student. And this is definitely like hate to love, because these two do not seem to like each other at all. The way they're talking to each other, like they're very different people, but I just really enjoyed following their perspectives. I mean, I guess I'm pretty sure this was in third person. Yeah. But just, I don't know. I was enjoying them as characters. And I wonder if the audiobook is helping with this, because the narrator is excellent. Like, I really enjoy his voice. I like the way he's narrating these dramatic situations, because I can tell even just from the first chapter that this is going to be like a drama book. And the writing is very like lush, which normally is not my thing, which is why I was like, well, maybe I'll try it with the audiobook, because then maybe I can ignore some of like, you know, metaphors and the over descriptive writing. And I found myself laughing out loud several times, and I don't think it's supposed to be funny necessarily. I think I was just like getting a kick out of the writing. And maybe that's not the way it's supposed to go, but I was having a good time. So I think I would continue this one as long as I do it on audiobook. I'm just trying to think if I could figure out a line to tell you. It was just like over the top of like, I don't even know. Oh, okay, here's a line of just like describing each other. It's like, he looked as if he just stepped out of the gym, with his wide, sculpted, scar-rippled chest glazed in a sheen of sweat, and a pair of loose black track pants hanging off his hips, the elastic waistband barely clinging to the narrow line cut below his iliac crest. So it was just a little over the top, but kind of was cracking me up. And so I kind of want to keep going and read it, but I don't think I want to read it physically, because I think that would drive me nuts to read those kind of like overly descriptive sentences. But I'm enjoying it, the guy reading it out loud. I don't know, I feel like this might be one where I would end up like laughing during the sex scenes, which sounds so like bad, but I have a feeling the sex scenes are going to be so like described down to like the minutia of like what's going on. So I don't know. I had a good time. I'm going to keep going and read it at some point. And then I picked up A Taste of Gold and Iron. And this one, I ended up not reading the whole first chapter because it was 30 pages long. And like I said, it's the last day of February. I wanted to get this up. So I didn't read the whole thing, but I could tell I was enjoying it. But I've heard mixed reviews about this one. I've heard some people really loving it and some people saying it's very slow and, you know, is very focused on the romance instead of the fantasy. But I was enjoying the writing that I was reading, like the first like 10 pages or whatever that I ended up reading. I was enjoying it, and I was enjoying our main character. We're following a prince called Kadou. I don't know, it's Kadou, so maybe Kadou. And his sister is the leader of their country. I don't know if it's kingdom, because I think she was called the Sultan. And so he is not the ruler, but then he gets like kind of in trouble with this ambassador. And so his sister's like, I need to get you out of the like limelight. And so she sends him to investigate this like robbery or something like that, and assigns him this bodyguard. And that's like the romance. It's like a bodyguard romance. But we don't even meet the bodyguard. I even like skimmed through the rest of those 30 pages in the first chapter to see if we would meet the second character, because I wanted to kind of see their meet cute or whatever, but we don't even get to meet him in the first chapter. So I didn't feel like I needed to read all 30 pages to kind of get that I liked our main character. I get like a little more into the world, and I liked it. I'll keep this one. It seems like it'll be a slow read because it is very long, and like from what other people have said, it doesn't seem to be action packed. So this might be one I just want to like slow and steady and just pick up here and there. All right, so now let's talk about what I'm keeping and what I'm getting rid of. So in terms of what I'm sending back, I ended up splitting them exactly between the like historical and the contemporary. So I had a couple historicals that just weren't working for me. I would say none of these are things that I won't come back to, possibly. Like, of all the things, these I don't know. I may or may not come back to these. Historical romance is very hit or miss for me. That's why I wanted to find new authors that I would like in historical romance, but I'm just not sure how I feel yet about either of these. So these ones would be the least likely for me to come back to, but I may still give them a try. And then I have two contemporaries that I am not going to continue at this time, but I definitely want to come back to Delilah Green Doesn't Care and give it like maybe 50 pages before I make a decision about whether I would want to finish that one or not. So I'll definitely come back to this one at some point. And this one, I might try one of Chloe Lisa's other books before returning to this one, because I actually was like recommended one of her series. I can't remember what the series is called. I think it has something to do with brothers, but I was recommended that one, and I thought, well, maybe I'll try that one because I just am not completely on board with this main character in here, so I want to give this author the best chance and maybe try something else that I have been personally recommended, like that was recommended from an in real life friend. And then the four I'm going to keep and hopefully get to over the next couple months are, I have like the contemporary ones are these, The Summoning Up Love and Just Like This. Like I said, this one I was just being entertained by. And so I think that I will enjoy listening to that one. And then this one was flying by really quickly reading that first chapter. So I think this would be just like a fun, fast read. And then the ones that are more on the historical, like this is historical fantasy type thing. I think this will be a slow and steady, but I was liking the writing. And this one, I was really liking the main characters. So I'll definitely come back to this one sometime soon. So that's it. I'm keeping 4 of the 8 library books. If you've read any of these and you want to give me your thoughts, or if you have any romances that, based off of what I was saying, I liked or didn't like, if you want to recommend any romance authors, because like I said, I need to find some new favorites, because I feel like I've read a lot of the ones that I already know and like, and maybe I should do like a video sometime where I talk about the tropes I like and then get recommendations that way. But if you have ones you want to recommend to me, put them down below and I will see you next time. Bye.